Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on Google tools for optimizing your SEO. I'm Bob Hogan, the webinar coordinator today, and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I'm going to be your host, and our presenter is Nalini Goolsarran, and more on Nalini in just a minute, but first some brief information on SCORE. SCORE is a national partner of the SBA, and locally here at SCORE Fairfield County, we have over 100 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. And we offer 3 primary value-added services to small business owners. Nalini, if I could just ask you to advance the slide, please. We offer free one-on-one counseling, and you can access that either in person, by video, telephone, or email, whatever works best for you. And you can do that by either using the yellow bit.ly link on the screen or by going to our website and clicking on Request a Mentor. Secondly, we offer a wide range of educational workshops and webinars throughout the year, like the one today. And lastly, we offer extensive resources on our website, including access to subject matter experts. Our next live webinar will be tomorrow, Thursday, February 24th at 6 p.m. And the topic is Sales and Marketing, How to Use Both to Grow Your Small Business with John Dupree presenting. You can find more specifics again on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. And if you're on our website, you could also take advantage of a large number of archived webinars that you can access on demand. Just some logistics for today. We have set aside time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, and Nalini will take as many as we can up to the top of the hour. If you have a question, please use the Q&A window at the bottom, and you can type that in at any time, and you can access that button just by hovering on the bottom of your screen. We will end our webinar sharply at 1 o'clock to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be available on our website within the next day or so. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Nalini Goolsarran. Nalini is the founder of EdgeSpace Marketing and is passionate about transforming business practices and streamlining communications. She has a BS in Computer Information Systems and experience in IT, project management, and communications. Before becoming an entrepreneur, she was an Associate COO for a division of a global financial institution. Nalini believes in the strength of her community and regularly volunteers for organizations and causes that empower the next generation. Nalini, it's all yours.
Thanks, Bob. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We are going to talk quite a bit about all the Google tools that you can use for your search engine optimization. One of the things that I've taught in the past for you guys have been, what is SEO? So we're going to talk quite a bit more about the analytics, the search console, Google My Business, Google Trends, Google Keyword Planner, and the type of items that you can use to help your SEO. So I'm going to briefly touch on what is SEO. Ultimately, it's, are you on page 1 of Google? That is really what everyone is looking for. So let's talk really quickly about how SEO works before we get into your Google Analytics and Search Console. Ultimately, your goal is to increase the quantity and quality of the traffic to your website through organic search engine. So one of the things to keep in mind with SEO is that you don't necessarily want thousands of people coming to your website if they're not necessarily going to be able to use your content. You want to make the content meaningful. So let's talk a little bit about how that works. When someone wants to find information on the internet, they type or say the words they're looking for. So one thing to keep in mind is voice search is a growing opportunity for SEO. How you configure your website and such doesn't change, but just keep that in mind because of the what's called natural search language. So before, you might find keywords that are a bit aggregated or they're just disparate. What you're looking for now is natural language phrases. How do I do something? Why do I do something? What is something, right? People are talking in sentences now or complete questions as opposed to just random phrases. Once you put your information on your website, whether you publish a blog, whether it's a brand new website, whatever that new content is, Google is crawling all the time, and Google will crawl your website and it's going to index that information. What it's then going to do is take that information that's been indexed and it's going to match it to your search criteria or the user search criteria. So for example, if your website is configured for, in my case, digital marketing in Stanford, but somebody's specifically looking for search engine optimization in Stanford, I may not get found because the keywords that I used did not match what the user was looking for. So that's what you want to keep in mind as you approach SEO on the whole. And then lastly, there's a whole lot of factors that go into what your SEO is, like what your ranking factors are. Those of you who may have come to my class last month, we talked quite a bit about what those ranking factors are. So if you don't know them and you're curious about them, check out one of the SCORE recorded webinars on that, because that's going to be important if you want to get into technicalities of that. Things to keep in mind as you approach your SEO. You want to identify your keywords using Google Trends and the Google Keyword Planner. Google Keyword Planner is quite advanced, and so I only recommend that for advanced users. I'm going to touch on it briefly at the end. It's complex on its own, and we could probably take a whole hour just talking about the Keyword Planner, so I'm just going to touch on it briefly. You want to configure your on-site and off-site SEO, so this is where knowing your ranking factors and such come in, so check out the class on that if you want to know those details. You then want to configure your Google Search Console and your Google Analytics. You want to submit your you want to submit your sitemap to the Google Search Console. So your sitemap is basically a list of anything and everything that's on your website. The files, the photos, the pictures, videos, all of those things, so that Google knows what to index. And then lastly, you want to set up your Google My Business. So today we're going to specifically talk about setting up your Google Analytics. We're going to set up your Google Search Console, set up your Google My Business, and then talk briefly about Google Trends and Google Keywords. So let's get into Google Analytics. We hear about it all the time. We don't necessarily know what it means. Maybe you're configured and you have no idea how to interpret the reports. So I'm going to give you a little overview on that. So one of the first things to keep in mind with Google Analytics, the whole point of it is that it is the process of tracking and collecting and analyzing your marketing data. And that sounds really great. And then you're looking at the reports and you're going, I have no idea what to look for. So things you want to look for include your user traffic, your bounce rate, which is really the number of times a user lands on your website and exits without doing anything or going to another page or interacting with your web page. And I'm going to get into some of that specifically, because sometimes people see a bounce rate of 100, you think 100 is good, 100 is actually bad, and we'll talk about that in detail shortly. You want to know how long users are spending on your website. If someone's spending 5 seconds on average on your website, how much are they really reading? How much are they actually engaging with your content? So you want to keep an eye on that number, because if you don't know how long they're spending on your website, you don't really know if the content that you have is the right type of content. Is it engaging enough? You could have a design flaw. There's lots of reasons why those numbers can change. You also kind of want to know what devices they're using, where they're coming from. This is all information that helps you figure out how to better optimize your website. Prior to the pandemic, we saw a higher number of users on mobile devices than laptops and tablets. What we're seeing now, and it's shifting now that things are changing, but in the last year, we saw a higher trend of tablet and desktop devices or laptop devices. And that's because more people were home. So they're not necessarily searching on their phones as much as they have access to their computers to search for things that they want. So those numbers will shift, and that's why you want to keep an eye on environmental factors, things that are happening, seasonal trends, and we'll talk about some of that in a bit. And then lastly, you want to know how people are finding your website. Did they come to you through Google? Did they come to you directly through a link that someone gave them? Did they come through your newsletter? Did they come through social media? This helps you figure out in general how your marketing strategy is kind of working for you or maybe against you. So I promised you to talk about how we set it up. This is a question we get all the time. What you're looking at here is a screenshot of my Google Analytics that's already logged in. For those of you who have not logged into Google Analytics before, you go to analytics.google.com, and your screen may look different than this. You may get a completely brand new screen that says setup. Because I've used it before, this is the screen I have. In the lower left corner, there is a gear icon. From the gear icon, it opens up this panel where you're going to want to create a property. The whole point of it is every time you have a website, Google considers that a property. Your mobile app is also considered a property. For those of you who are tracking analytics via mobile apps as well, they go hand in hand. Now that you're going to create a property, you get this screen and you want to know what to do with it. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to type in your property name. This does not have to be the URL or domain name. This is really just for you to know what it is. In my case, because I have Google Analytics set up for lots of different clients, it makes it easy for the clients to identify their Google Analytics and also for me to identify it from other different client accounts. You want to set your time zone. This is important for tracking the traffic and knowing the right numbers. So for example, if you need to know when you can take your website down for maintenance, if you're in the wrong time zone, Google may give you a time frame that says users are less active between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. when, if that was California time on the East Coast, we're really looking at 6 to 9 p.m. So that's why this is important to set your time zone. The currency, I skipped over it because most of us in the US, if you're in a different country, you set your currency, and that's most important for e-commerce websites. Here's a really important thing you want to do. Before you finish setting up your property, you want to click Show Advanced Options. When you click Show Advanced Options, it brings you to this screen, which is called Creating a Universal Analytics Property. You want to turn that icon on. Now, the reason for this is before, Google Analytics had one property type, and this was the screen you always saw. They now have something called G4, and G4 is their new way of tagging apps and, mobile apps and websites and different components together if they're all part of one specific property. So, for example, if EdgeSpace Marketing had a mobile app that went along with it, we can link those together so Google can track the traffic together using a G4 analytics. Most people need the universal analytics property, which is why you want to turn this on. Now, this can get a little confusing, so I always recommend just turn it on. The reason for that is if you're on Shopify, Shopify's already switched over to the G4 analytics and the universal analytics property doesn't work. Whereas WordPress, depending on if you're using Yoast, is still on the universal analytics property. So the G4 doesn't work. So I find that it's just best turn on this icon, fill out these details, and you don't have to worry about which one is my website going to accept, because now it's going to accept both. So the next step is this is where you're going to put in your specific domain name. In my case, the www.edgespacemarketing.com. You don't have to put in the www, but I recommend it. It's kind of universal standard. You want to make sure you turn on this icon that says create both of these, your G4 and your universal analytic property. And then the box underneath it that says enable enhanced measurement is always turned on. Leave it turned on. It's a good thing. You want them to actually collect those stats, because if you don't turn it on, you won't get the metrics you're looking for. And then you're going to click next. Next brings you to this screen where you're then going to fill out just basic details about your business. Sometimes if you don't know the answer, you can just click other and just move forward. You're going to click create here. And it brings you to this screen. Sometimes you can be done right here, like if you're dealing with a Shopify website, it might take the measurement ID, which is in the upper right corner, or you might need one of these items down at the bottom. If you're an advanced user and you're using the Google Tag Manager, for those who have custom built websites, you might need the code that's in this space. But for other users who may be on WordPress, for example, and need the Universal Analytics tag, you're going to click on Connected Site Tags at the very bottom. And it brings you to this screen. And you can see here it says UA-11 something something. You're going to copy that and paste it wherever you need to paste it on your website. Now, unfortunately, because of lack of time, I can't get into where to put it on WordPress, Shopify, Squarespace, and Wix. So there's different tutorials for those online and depending on how you have your website configured. But the first step is configure the analytics, and then you can Google around and figure out where do you need to put it in on your website. So then let's talk about the reports. These crazy looking reports, they have no idea what they mean. Here's a report for the last 90 days for my website. So I have users, sessions, bounce rate, session duration, and a graph. What does that really mean? So let's break it down a little bit. First thing you're looking at is users. This is the total number of unique users that have visited my website in the last 90 days. So that means they had unique IP addresses for those that are very techie, and they're coming from a specific IP address every time. The next one, which equals sessions, is the number of visits. So this means out of 404 users, there were 100 or so extra sessions generated. Somebody, either one person came back 100 times or more than one people came back more than one time. That's also important information. Returning users is a good thing. If you have a website that you're selling a product and people are coming back, you want to know that. In my case, this is good to know that someone maybe came to my website, was interested in something, maybe they didn't decide what they wanted to do yet, they came back later, or maybe they had it bookmarked to come back later. So there are different factors why someone would revisit your website, and you kind of want to think about that a little bit. The other thing you want to think about is that in my case, I had 400 users visit my website in the last 90 days. I didn't get 400 phone calls or 400 emails requests. So then I'm gonna have to ask myself, is there a conversion issue? Is there a navigation issue? Is there a load time? How do I know what the problem could be? So now we look at the bounce rate. My bounce rate is 68%, and you can see it's actually down 6.3%, and it's in green, and you're wondering, why is a number going down better than a number going up, especially on a percentage? Given that the bounce rate means that somebody came to your website and did nothing, they just left. That means that they came, they either didn't find what they're looking for, they were unhappy with their experience, or maybe they did find what they were looking for and they got it and they left. So for example, maybe somebody came to my website to just validate that I'm a real business. They don't need to do anything because they already have my contact details. That's okay. Maybe I have a one-page website where a one-pager is a website that's a single page and all the sections are the about us, the services are just listed in one page going down. That's a one-page website, and those websites tend to have a higher bounce rate because it's one page. There's no other pages for them to go to. So you can't expect users to do that. So that's where those numbers get a little tricky. I have multiple pages on my website. So 68% looks good to me because by design, I want people to come to my website, validate that I exist because of these SCORE webinars, and call me or email me because maybe they have my contact information already from the webinar. They don't necessarily need to go to the contact us page, or they don't want to fill out the form. So those are reasons why. If I was seeing 100% bounce rate, I'd be very concerned. That means they're not going to any other pages. They're not interested in my portfolio. They're not interested in my services. So maybe I have a navigation issue. Maybe my website took too long to load. Not sure. Those are things you want to dig into as you try to figure out if you have 100% bounce rate and you do not have a one-page website, that could be a problem. If you have a physical business, sometimes people are coming just to look for your address. And that could be, if you have a good design website, it's at the bottom of the footer or at the bottom of the webpage in the footer. So they came, they scrolled all the way down, they grabbed the address and they moved on. So that's also okay. If that is by design, that is okay. So you want to think about what your design is in terms of your customer journey. The last statistic here we're looking at is session duration. So people are spending an average of 1 minute and 34 seconds on a website, my website. Now, that may not seem a lot to you, but it really is. In today's day and age, the statistics say that you have 8 seconds to grab a user's attention. So if you think about that, someone typed in marketing in Google, they clicked a link, 2 seconds have gone by. They go to my website, another 2 seconds have gone by. I've got 4 seconds left to impress them. And if that initial entrance of the website, the design doesn't grab them, they don't feel like they want to continue and they leave, then I've not necessarily done a good job. 1 minute and 34 seconds mean that they're either reading through content, they're going to other pages, and they're really taking a look at who is this person and do I want to do business with them. So those are numbers you want to look at. The average session duration per Google is around 2 to 3 minutes for a new website visit. Some of these recurring visits or returning visits, people spend a longer amount of time because they're taking a little bit more deeper dive into what they're looking for. Lastly, you want to look at spikes in the graph. So this graph is the last 90 days from my website. Actually, from today, I took the screenshot. So what we're seeing is there was a spike in mid-January. Now, what I have to ask myself is, why was there a spike in mid-January? Did I do something? So I didn't send a newsletter. I did a couple of social media posts, but I taught a SCORE webinar, and that spike directly correlates with the 24-hour period after my webinar. So I know that my marketing efforts are doing something. It is driving traffic to my website. That is what I want. So if you're putting out newsletters and you're putting out social media, sometimes there's a spike and you're not sure what it is. Did you do a podcast in conjunction with someone else? Meaning, do you have traffic coming from somewhere else? Now, because of the interest of time, I can't get into all the other reports that you can generate from your Google Analytics, but this is the first one you want to start to understand. On the homepage, there's other reports around user location, pages that are popular, devices they're coming from. Those reports are all there. Unfortunately, I can't get into all of those today. We're going to jump over now to Google Search Console, because this is where you're going to want to submit your sitemap. Very often when people build websites, whether they do it themselves or they work through a web developer, the analytics is connected, but the Search Console is then not connected, and there's a missed opportunity there. It's not necessarily wrong, but it's a huge missed opportunity because it is your opportunity to tell Google about your website. If you don't connect your Search Console and you don't submit your sitemap, what you will find is that you have to wait till Google discovers your website and indexes it. If you make a change to your website, you get basically getting to the back of the line. There could be 60,000 websites in front of you to get re-indexed. So you don't want to get to the back of the line, you want to jump to the front of the line. So when you submit your sitemap to Google, Google will then know when to index your website, because every time you make an update, your sitemap gets updated, Google gets notified, and then you move to the front of the line to get re-indexed, which is what you want. More opportunities for re-indexing means more opportunities for Google to put you through the crawler and say your content is fresh. Those are one of your ranking factors. And it's also why people write blogs, to keep their content fresh so they continue to get re-indexed. And the primary use of it is to understand how your site is performing. So let's break that down again. Google Analytics is basically how your site is found and how your site is, people are using your website. But this one is really how your site is performing in Google search, which is the next part, right? You want to get found on Google. How are they finding me? So let's take a look at that. So first you want to set it up. And the hardest part about setting up your Google Search Console, there's no direct link to it like you have with Analytics. So I always tell people Google Search Console, and then you click the very first link, which takes you to Google Search Console. You'll come to a screen like this. Whether you have Google Search already or you don't, you'll probably come to the screen. You're going to click Start Now, and you end up on a screen like this. Now, for those who have never used Google Search Console, you're actually in a few slides, you'll see the screen you'll get first, which is basically configure a new property. In this case, because I already have properties configured, it takes me here. But you want to add a new property per se. Maybe you have another website or somebody gave you access to an old website and you need to add one. In the upper left corner, there's a little drop down. You're going to click the drop down and you're going to get this drop down. You can see these list of different websites that I have access to. And the very bottom, you're going to click Add Property. When you click Add Property, you come to this screen. Now, this is the screen for those of you who are brand new to Google Search Console. This might be the screen that you come to. Now, you have two options. You can configure your website via domain, or you can configure your website via your URL prefix. I know this sounds confusing. You want to use URL prefix. The reason you don't want to use domain is because you have to be a pretty advanced user and know how to configure your DNS for that verification. Notice it says that that requires DNS verification, which is usually done through your domain provider. It's a lot more complicated if you're not tech savvy and you don't have that expertise. Using the URL prefix is pretty straightforward, and all you have to do is type in www. whatever it is. You do need your HTTPS or HTTP. Hopefully you have your secure socket turned on, your SSL. So it's HTTPS www. your domain name. So they give you the format. If you don't fill it in correctly, it'll throw an error, so you'll know. They do recommend that you configure both versions of your website, the www. and without the www. In this case, because I already had my Google Analytics configured, this is where the G4 thing comes in, it auto-verified. In the old days, as in 2 years ago, it didn't have the G4 Analytics, and then you had to go through a few more hoops in order to make this connection. In this case, it auto-verifies now, which is why it's important for, in our earlier step, you create both the G4 and your Universal Analytics, because it makes this step super easy. Now, how you connect it to your website can be a little tricky. Again, that all depends on your platform. Wix, WordPress, Squarespace, they all have different guides on how to make this connection once you have the console set up. So you'll have to do some Googling around what you need to do to make that connection. There's some wizards in place already on those platforms. So you just follow the instructions on screen and you end up with it connected. But you want to first create them in your consoles. So now you want to submit your sitemap. What's that all about? Now, when you come to your Google Search Console, they've made it really easy. The left side of the screen, there's a button called Sitemap. You click Sitemap, it takes you to this screen. When you get to this screen, you then want to type in the box where it says Enter Sitemap URL, and you click Submit. In this case, you can see that my sitemap was submitted on November 15th, 2021, and the last time Google read it was February 20th, 2022. So Google read my sitemap 2 days ago. What that means is that Google re-indexed my website, it's actually 3 days ago, and it was successful. You're looking for here's failures. Failures could mean that either the sitemap is unreadable, you have the wrong format for your sitemap. If you moved your website, did you move your sitemap? There's lots of different reasons why. You only need to submit your sitemap one time. Your sitemap will always be here unless you delete it. So in this case, I submitted it in November of 2015, and there it is. So that is how you navigate your sitemap. If you're wondering, how do I know what my sitemap is? For those of you who have existing websites, take a screenshot of this page. You can Google it, but here are the standard sitemap formats for your different websites. They're all basically sitemap.xml. If you're using the Yoast plugin for WordPress, it's sitemap_index.xml. So now you want to look at some of the reports in your Google Search Console. You see these crazy looking graphs again, and you're like, what does this mean? This is the performance report. Again, there's lots of maps you can look at. This is one of the most important ones to me when I'm looking at clients' performance and how a website is doing. So in this case, this is my website over the last 90 days as well. And you can see that there are total clicks and there's total impressions. And if you think about users versus sessions, it's the same concept. Clicks means I had 103 times somebody actually clicked edgespacemarketing.com or EdgeSpace MKTG. They came to my website. 38,000 times I showed up in searches. So impressions mean you showed up in the search results. So that's pretty good. I mean, that's again, click-through average of 0.3, not necessarily so great. So then I have to think about what am I configured for and how am I configuring. I'm not overly worried about this because again, that is by design for my business. I don't mind this being that way. But if you have a business that's maybe e-commerce or you're highly dependent on volume, you want a higher click-through rate on that. In my case, I'm okay with this because this is by design because I don't necessarily want to feel too many calls from Google and emails because I don't have a big enough team to handle, 38,000 websites right now. So on that same page, when you scroll down, it gives you a look at what the queries are. So queries are what people actually typed in and how you showed up. So in this case, when someone in the last 90 days typed in EdgeSpace, they were clicked on 10 times, they came to my website, and I showed up 97 times in the search. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. They could just be validating my business. It could be somebody checking my SEO. Since I'm teaching SEO classes, they could be wondering, does my SEO work? Half of those are probably me because most often when I'm looking for my website, I just type in EdgeSpace and I just go to Google and it takes me there. That's one of the ways people use Google for navigation searches. So those numbers aren't necessarily a bad thing to me. EdgeSpace Marketing, website pricing calculator, website cost estimator. I have some of those features on my website and it's bringing in folks. I even have someone typed in Google SEO best practices. They clicked on it one time and I showed up 195 times. That's still okay for me because that's by design. If I had a business that was highly dependent on that traffic, I'd want to analyze what's happening and figure out what keywords are missing or maybe the language to draw them into the website's not strong enough. So now we're going to take a look over at our Google My Business. This is really important, especially if you have a location-based business, meaning you have a physical location, but this is also very important for virtual businesses as well. Why do you need Google My Business? Google My Business is primarily used to engage your customers. So you want to gather reviews. It is free for anyone with Gmail, but it's really so that you can control your contact details, your hours, and your website. You don't want, spam accounts coming in and stealing your traffic. Restaurants notoriously have this challenge where Uber Eats or DoorDash or one of those commandeers the Google My Business. And so instead of the website link taking them directly to the website of the business, it's taking them to Uber Eats or DoorDash. Now, if that is the business's plan, that makes sense. But if the business didn't want that, that could be a problem because they're stealing their money, right? So you want to keep an eye on that if you are that type of business. The other reason you want to do this is that so that you can get listed on Google Maps for your location or the service location for your virtual business. So if someone's looking for something near me, that is a pretty high search ranking when you think about it. How often do you pick up a phone and say, I'm looking for pizza shops near me? You don't necessarily type in your address. Google recommends you use near me. So you want to get found for those local searches. And it is your first step for that local search, right? So how do you do this? It's a little complex depending on how it's set up, but most importantly, this is directly from Google, their search recommendations for, can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, sorry, Ryan, yeah.
Oh, so this is your first step for how you want to list your business on Google. Most often, your business is already listed on Google, which is why Google's asking you to claim your business. Very rarely are you adding a business because most times Google are getting your information from the post office. They're getting it from the state registration. It's a bit unclear how Google knows what businesses exist, but they figure it out more often than we do. So if your business is not yet in Google, you're going to add it. But if your business does exist, you want to claim it. And you want to make sure you check for that first before you add it. If you can claim it, claim it. I have a couple of situations that I'm working through with some clients right now where they added the business before realizing it already existed, so they didn't claim it. Now they have a duplication, and in the process of trying to get the new business verified with the old one that's already there that they couldn't claim, they got suspended. And now we're trying to figure out how to navigate the suspension. So you want to be very careful about that. Check to make sure it exists first, and if it does, claim it. The next step is your verification. This is very important because Google will not let you actually publish the updates on your website if you're not verified. So often clients get only an option for a postcard, and I couldn't tell you what the criteria is, why it's only a postcard versus sometimes you can verify with your email, like they'll send you a code, they'll either text you or call you. My only answer to that is Google has some type of score on all of us, and they say you're a verified person. I'll let you use the text and email option versus the postcard. But about 90% of the time, most of my clients have to deal with the postcard option. For virtual businesses or home-based businesses, this can be problematic or troublesome because you have to put your actual address on there. What I recommend is you have to put the address to get the postcard. And as soon as you get the postcard, then you can take the address off and make it a virtual business. So it's about a 5 to 7 day window when that postcard is coming, so just keep an eye out for it. This is very, very important. Once you put in the verification request, do not update anything on your profile until you enter that verification code. Why is that? Because Google has suspended businesses because it thinks it's scam. Now, it's really unfortunate because the screens, the navigation screens, will say, do you want to verify your business? You say yes, they say put in the postcard, you put in the address, and you click next, and it takes you to all these screens to update the details on your website. Now, for a couple of my clients where we got suspended, in our research, we found directly from Google, they said, do not update anything on the profile until you put in the verification code. So there is a skip option on those screens. So just make sure you click those skip options just for your own sanity and just to do things right. And then after you get the postcard, come back in and do the updates on your profile. Lastly, don't put anything in that business name line other than your business name. Don't put in a tagline, don't put in a location. If my business is called EdgeSpace Marketing, that's all I put in there, but I can't put in EdgeSpace Marketing Digital Marketing Services. Google flags that as suspicious activity and it'll also suspend your account. There's another client we're working through, how do we recover a suspended account specifically for that reason. So keep that in mind. The downside is if you do get suspended, it's a bit of a nightmare because you don't know why you got suspended, you're guessing, and you can only do is try to get your listing back, and that could take a while. So be very careful how you do this. It's very easy, but just make sure don't put anything in the title that's not the business name, claim a business that already exists, and don't put anything in until you get that verification code. So let's hop over to Google Trends. But before we go over to Google Trends, Bob, I thought I'd stop and take any couple of questions specific on that so that we don't, because we're going to change topic really quick.
Yeah, that sounds good. We do have one question that's come in. Can a post office box be used for verification?
No, that's a very, very good question. Thank you for that question. So no, you cannot use a post office box. It is another reason that your account will get flagged. If you try to put a post office box in the address field, Google will flag it. The reason is that my understanding of this, and I could be wrong, but based on my research, during the pandemic, there was a spike in the number of spam or scam accounts trying to commandeer real business listings so that they can take advantage of the web traffic and, redirect them and steal the data, steal the information, steal the customers. And they were using PO boxes. So Google doesn't allow that. You need to use a real address. This does become a problem for businesses that only have virtual, like mine is a home-based business. I had to use my real address. I have a client in the Cayman Islands who they don't have mailing addresses to their homes. It's only a post office system. We put in a ticket with Google explaining that, and Google hasn't really come back. We did find a way around it where with one of her 2 accounts, we put the PO box in the second line. So the first line had her real address. And then in the second line, instead of writing PO box, we just wrote box number 123. And she received the verification code for one of the businesses. The other business got suspended using the same method. So we're trying to figure out what's the difference between the two. So if you live in a location where you can only use a PO box, try that method and hope that the people at the post office will see that, line 2 says box number 123. Now, if you live in the United States and you have a mailing address, like a physical street number and address, use that because they won't allow the PO boxes.
Hey, there aren't any other questions on this topic right now, but if people have them, maybe you can type them in and we'll catch them at the end. So.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to switch over now to Google Trends. So Google Trends is now all about keywords. So we've set up your analytics, we've set up your search console, you set up your business. Basically, you've now told Google all about your business. Google now knows who you are, where you are, and what you do. Now you need to tell Google and your audience what your business is about and how you can help people. How do you get Google to match your website to people's search criteria? We do that using Google Trends. What we're trying to do is figure out what is the user's search intent, meaning what are they looking for when they type in that search criteria. So as I mentioned earlier, I can have my website configured for digital marketing Stanford and it could perform really well for digital marketing Stanford. But if my target audience is really looking for search engine optimization best practices, then I better have that keyword somewhere on my website. But how do we figure that out? So let's dig into how we figure that out. It starts as a guessing game, but you can refine your search once you get past the initial guessing. So let's take a look at some Google Trends. So you get here by going to trends.google.com, or with everything else, you can actually type in Google Trends and the first one will bring up. Here on the right side of the screen is what Google Trends look like when you first get there. They give you examples of what's been popular in the last 7 days. Here's what I'll tell you. Those three things, those three bubbles for as many years as I've been doing SEO have never changed. I refuse to believe that those folks, World Cup and American football versus football are the most trending topics for the last 3 years. I think this is just their standard splash screen. So, but you can go exploring. So what you want to use Google Trends for is to figure out what people are looking for. How do you figure out if I should type in digital marketing Stanford versus SEO versus search engine optimization? I've even seen criteria around SEO optimization. Now the O stands for optimization, but people are typing in SEO optimization. And I find that that's redundant, but if that's what people are searching for, then I should put that in somewhere on my website, even though it's grammatically incorrect. This is where it gets a little tricky. You have to figure out grammatically incorrect, natural language speaking, and matching people's search criteria. So it gets a little tricky, right? You also want to figure out what trending topics can help drive traffic to your website. So while I have my main topics, I might have some niche things that are specific. And when I show you the examples, this will start to make a little bit more sense. You also want to know what just in general are trending topics and what's capturing the public's imagination right now. You know, we have lots of things like the Super Bowl just ended. Is there something from one of the ads or something that happened at the event that you can use in your marketing campaign? This is where Google Trends come in so that you can help yourself figure out what is it that's happening right now and can I take advantage of that? Can I leverage it? And then you also want to figure out seasonal factors that affect your marketing strategy. In the examples I'm going to show you on the next screen, you'll see what I mean about seasonal factors. There's certain topics that are only, I don't want to say important, but they're important to people certain times of year because they have a specific date. For example, Valentine's Day is only February 14th. If you have a business that's targeted your marketing to Valentine's Day, you have 1 day of sales. You might have 1 month of sales if you really think about it. But what are you doing for the other 11 months of the year? Can your product be used for other purposes, whether it's flowers or candy and those type of things? You need to figure out seasonality so that you can capture the seasonal traffic, but at the same time, you can target your traffic for the rest of the year. So this is how you take some of the guesswork out of it. Here's an example of when you type in your Google search terms, you can do comparisons. To show you how it looks, I did 3 comparisons here around a flower shop, flowers for mom, and gifts for mom. As you can see, flower shop is trending. It's higher up. You see a statistic of it goes 25 to 100. If you hover over the little information bar in terms of interest over time, what Google tells you is this is a volume out of 100. It's not a specific number. So this doesn't mean that there was only 100 searches. It's more of a percentage of time. It's a bit nuanced and a bit confusing. So I just kind of say, take the graph in with a grain of salt. If you have no data for a specific search topic, then you know that that's not necessarily the right term or phrase that you're using. So you want to try to refine that so you can get some more information. You can also change your location, duration, categories and such, but this is more of a generic search. What we're also seeing looking at this is that flowers for mom barely performs. There's a small spike. And if you look at the timeline, that looks around May for Mother's Day, but people aren't necessarily Googling flowers for mom because it doesn't really spike. but people Google gifts for mom. And if you look at the graph, right, there's a little spike that's around Mother's Day. And when you go towards the end of the year, it increases leading up to Christmas. And there's a huge drop off right after Christmas. So if your business is targeting gifts for mom, then you know that there's going to be a flat time of year between, Mother's Day and Christmas. So what do you do in between? Now, if you're a flower shop, you've got flowers year round. So, you target your flower shop. But let's take a look at that flower shop a little more, because it's a little bit broader, and that's what you want to think about. Take your broad term and then refine it down. Let me show you how. When you scroll down on the page, I took out the other search criteria, and this is only flower shop. In the upper left corner, you can see flower shop. There's a country map showing you which states are performing better or not. So if you have a location-based business, this might be important. I tend to jump over that map. What I'm looking for is the bottom of the screen, which has related topics and related queries. Notice under related topics, corsage shows up there. I would have never thought about corsages. It's very important. It's related to flowers. It doesn't come to mind for me initially. And then when I look at related queries, corsage shows up again. And if you notice, the percentage against both of them is 250% of the time increase that people are looking for corsages. So if I have a flower shop, I should probably look at corsages. Now, before we move to this from the screen, I want to talk a little bit about topic versus query. Topic gives you a broad search. So if you dig into the topic, topic will give you the queries that roll up into the topic. A query is very, very specific, and you're just going to get data on that query. You're not going to get too many other information points that you need. So you want to start with your topics and then maybe look at your queries. What you're looking for in the queries are what are called long tail keyword phrases, or just keyword phrases. You might see in the queries, other than corsages, there might be other things in there that you're like, oh, I should use that for my SEO in places. But the topic is a place to start to break that down. So I went into the topic report. Let me show you what it looks like. When we look at corsages, and if you see in the upper left, it says topic underneath corsage. This graph performs throughout the year. It's not necessarily flat, and there are two spikes in the graph. Now, what do those spikes correlate to? The first spike looks to be around prom season. That's May, around based on where the graph is. And when you hover, it'll actually tell you the specific time frame. That's May, so that's prom season. When you look at the bottom where you've got on the right side where you've got what looks like September, October, that's homecoming season. Corsages are very important those two times of the year, but apparently people are using corsages other times. Corsages are important to weddings and other events. So if you have a flower shop, corsages would be a very good thing for you to use as a keyword to target. But that's only one keyword. You need anywhere from 7 to 25 different keywords. How else can you figure out what do you do with corsages? If you scroll down on your screen, on your Google Trends screen, related topics and related queries come up. On the left side, you see more topics around homecoming, prom, bow tie, and specifically a color. So if you offer that color, that's a trending topic around color. So maybe you want to target that. When you look at queries, there are 5 very specific topics that you can use, queries. These are all names that you can use to name a blog when you think about it, right? There could be a blog that says, what side does the boutonniere go on? Somebody's actually searching for that quite a bit of times. Do you wear a corsage for homecoming? 4,800 times that showed up in a search. If I was in a flower shop business and I was writing a blog, I would absolutely write a blog on that topic. Same for homecoming corsage ideas, corsage and boutonniere set for prom, so on and so forth. And it gives you up to 25. This list can be very insightful in terms of what you name your blog, what things people are searching for, and how you really bring in that traffic to your website. So this is just how you get started. As I mentioned before, you're looking for anywhere from 7 to 25 different keywords. You want to make sure that they're varying, because if you use the same keywords over and over again, Google will what's called shadow ban. You'll get flagged in violation of their search ranking factors. So you want to make sure you create those variations. Now we're going to get into the keyword planner. I'm just, again, a very light touch. The keyword planner is for very advanced users. If you're comfortable with Google Trends and you're comfortable, getting into what's called the Google AdWord, I will always say I don't recommend Google Ads. I prefer you work on your organic search before your Google Ads. The reason for that is your Google Ads must be configured very, very keenly and specifically. If you misconfigure your ads, regardless if the click was a bad click and it was like a click that was worth $50 a click, and you got 6 of those, that's 6 times 50 that you owes Google, and Google doesn't care that it was a bad click. it was a pay-per-click. So you want to make sure you have an expert in that field, they're certified and they know what they're doing before you get into Google ads. But the keyword planner, while it's linked to your Google ads, you can use it for what's called a non-campaign. There's some steps to follow in terms of how you set that up, but it's absolutely doable so you can get into your Google keyword planner. Why you want to use your Google Keyword Planner. The Google Keyword Planner gives you insights around the value of your keywords. So this is a GIF that's kind of showing when you look up SEO, this actually had over 1,000 hits in terms of phrases and words that you can use for your Google search, your keywords, but you can see they all have a weighted value. So in terms of low bid and high bid, if it's moving kind of fast, and this is in pounds, but if you look at it, there's one on here where a singular click for a Google webinar was $15. SEO tip, SEO marketing is ranked at $14. I'm a small business. I don't know that I can afford $14 and $15 a click. If you look at, I had 100 clicks, that's a lot of money, right? And so if you have that type of budget, great. If you don't, then stick to the organic marketing. But this gives you some insights though of how you can dig in even further to how to build out your keywords. So what you want to do is you want to put in your words, phrases, or even your URL related to your business, and Google will provide these suggestions. You can then enter up to 10 keywords or phrases at a time as you go through the list, and then you can kind of pick and choose, right, as you go through. For each of these, you're seeing average monthly searches, the competition, and the top of the page bid, low and high. Now those numbers, the bids are of course if you're going to use paid advertising, but the competition tells you how competitive that keyword is. And this is where you're getting into whether you want to get niche or broad. You always want to use a combination of both. So that's really just a broad view of Google Keyword Planner. We're not going to get into details how to set that up or anything because it is quite complex and we can spend a whole hour on here just doing that. So questions?
Okay, we have about 10 or 15 minutes here for questions. Just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A button and type in your question there, and we will take as many as we can up until the top of the hour. I know Nalini's covered a lot of material here, so if your question relates to one of the earlier topics, I'm sure she'll be able to also scroll back to that slide. And maybe we'll just pause here for a minute.
All right. Oh, sorry, I was trying to get to the questions. Either I blew everyone's mind or I put everyone to sleep.
Yeah. It's very unusual. I think maybe you've answered everyone's question here. This question this come up a couple times, Nalini, on whether the slides will be shared. I've suggested that they just contact you directly.
Yeah, we can do that. They're pretty large, so usually the best way is when they go on YouTube, you can stop and screenshot as you go. I see one question here. What if you have multiple sites like landing pages and website? Can we add all of them under one Google My Business? So that's a bit of a complex question. I would say that if you have, let me think about that for a moment. Most often you have a master page. It's the main page that should drive traffic to the sub pages for your website. So your Google My Business, any one business should have one website. What I have seen is that there are businesses that have multiple websites for different regions. So whether it's the US versus Canada versus Great Britain, whatever, there's still usually like a main landing page and they can change their region. So you can really only add one website to your Google My Business. I've not seen anywhere where you can add more than one. And I have a feeling that if you attempt to add more than one in any other space that's not for the website, they might flag you for suspicious activity and suspend you. So that might be a business strategy question to think about. So really, do you have a master landing page that drives to the other sub pages, or are those independent businesses? Independent businesses should have their own Google My Business listing.
Okay, that's great. Very clear. We have a question here from Paul. He's really asking you, could you go over again how you got to Google Keyword Planner? Just how you get there.
Yeah, and the best thing to do, Paul, is to go to Google and type in Google Keyword Planner, and it'll take you right to the screen. When you get there, it'll actually tell you that you need to sign up for an ads account and stuff. What I usually recommend is do a quick Google around how to set up your Google Keyword Planner, and there's some really thorough blogs that take you right through the steps. I couldn't include all the steps in the presentation because we'd be here all day, unfortunately.
Okay. There's a question here from Michelle, who says, I haven't had luck with a marketing company. How can I find a trustworthy one?
My recommendation is SCORE, the SBA. Talk to them and see who they like and they recommend. Go to webinars and see who you like in terms of how you connect with via the webinar, and call people and talk to them. It just depends on what you're looking for. Different marketing companies have different niches. Like, I'm very honest and say I don't do Google Ads. I've had a lot of people call me and say, looking for Google Ads. I don't do it, and I don't actually know anyone that I would recommend. And I usually send them to SCORE or the SBA.
Great, thanks very much. We have one from Aaron. How often should you look at your Google Analytics, daily or multiple times a week?
Really weekly or monthly is probably a good idea. You can really get bogged down looking at it day to day. It doesn't give you enough of an insight in that short of a period of time. So I tend to look at my clients' analytics once a week if we're doing like a deep dive on their analytics work, or once a month if we're just kind of checking to see how performance is doing. And that's the thing with Google Analytics and just SEO in general. You do a little bit and you wait, you do a little bit and you wait. So it's really a long-term effort. It's not something you're going to just do one and done, but it is not something that you do daily either. It's more of a weekly, monthly activity.
Very, very helpful. Here's one from Sharon. SEO efforts should put more effort on the Google My Business platform or on the website content.
Always on your website content first. Google would prioritize your website content for credibility before your Google My Business. What I usually recommend is put all your thought and effort into building out really good quality website content, and then just copy that information over to your Google My Business. You do want it to match. Google is checking for that to match. This will be the one and only time that I'll tell you to have the same content in two places. Ideally on your website, you don't want to have the same content exactly the same duplicated on page to page. Google will flag you for duplicated content, but your Google My Business and your website should ideally match.
Okay, perfect. Here's one from Josie. Will you discuss a bit about keywords, specifically anything we should be doing with website bracket content for keywords, or in our website setup, i.e. something in WordPress we need to enter keywords?
Yeah, if you take a look at the recorded webinars that going back, I think it was called SEO Basics Get Found on Google. I taught that last month. It gets into the ranking factors and it gets into some of those technical specifications. And stay tuned, because we are planning, Bob and I are settling on dates for next month or the month after for a specific workshop on keywords, and we'll take a deep dive into that specific question.
Okay. Good primer, good preview. Here's one from Joseph. Related topics and related queries numbers were in percentages, but I think you said people, example,
4,800.
4,800.
Yeah, and that's a good catch. So it's a bit challenging because it doesn't give you a specific number. I equate those to individual searches. 48%, 100% is them putting that in some type of formula and coming out by saying there was an increase by this percentage. So I misspoke when I said people specifically, but there was a 4,800% increase in that search.
Here's one from Lucy that we may not have time to cover, but she's saying, I had a problem setting up Google Search Console through Wix. Can you just refresh how to access Google Search Console?
Yeah, so Lucy, what you want to do is two things. Go into Wix, and Wix actually has a Google, like a wizard for connect your Google Search Console, and you might need to search the help docs in terms of how to set it up if it's already set up. If you just need to find where your Google Search Console is, then you just Google Google Search Console, and that first link shall take you right to your Search Console.
Okay, that's great. Okay, this is just a question on how to access it from Sharon. Will there be a link provided? Sharon, if you want to watch the recording, you can go to the SCORE website, www.fairfieldcounty.score.org, and you'll go to webinars and click on demand webinars, and then the next day or so, this one will be at the top of the list. Okay. Here's one from Tara. Why do Facebook posts have such a high bounce rate and a low page view time?
Now, that's an interesting question. I don't know that I've seen specifically Facebook and bounce rates and page view time, so I'm not sure if you have a page on your website that have Facebook posts loaded to it. one of the things that I can tell you is that Facebook actually officially announced this a few years ago that they deliberately suppress business posts on Facebook. They're trying to get back to the, the people and friends model that they had originally. So business posts just aren't performing. They're also doing it deliberately. It's called the pay for play model. They're trying to force, you to do more business ads on Facebook. So there's that. If you're using Instagram or other social media marketing tools, we can look at what's happening there. But on Facebook in particular, that could happen. Now, bounce rate and low page views, I'd have to understand that one a little bit more because I don't know that I've seen those specific stats for Facebook.
Okay. Just a reminder, if we still have about 5 minutes left, so if you have questions, please use the Q&A button and we'll take as many as we can in the next few minutes. Our next one is from Howard. Can Google Keyword Planner be used standalone, or does it have to be connected to an AdWords campaign?
It can be used alone. If you Google how to set up your Google Keyword Planner or how to access it or how to use it, I forgot the direct search term. There is a blog from Ahrefs. It's Ahrefs, and they walk you through how to set up your Google Keyword Planner or how to get in without connecting it directly to an AdWords campaign. It's like an 8-step process, but they have screenshots and it's a pretty detailed blog to walk you through the process.
Here's one from Lorraine. Does a UPS box qualify as a physical address?
Unfortunately, I don't know actually, because the UPS boxes, if I'm not mistaken, are the ones that are supposed to give you the it's a virtual live address. I don't have a direct answer for that. I mean, I feel like Google's going to tell you no, you should use a physical location address, but that one might work. I don't know if Google has a way of telling if those UPS boxes that have street addresses are actually PO box in fact. So I'm a bit uncertain on that one.
Yeah, I could just maybe expand on that. Our experience at Score is if your mail goes to UPS, it does give you a physical address rather than a box number. So I think if that's the case, you might be okay using that physical address. But again, I can't validate it either.
Yeah, I think it's worth a try, but just Lorraine, if you set up your Google My Business, and Google will kick it back actually when you're filling out the place where it says send verification card, it'll tell you before you even can click verify or send card if it'll accept that address. So for anybody on the webinar goes to Google Google My Business to verify and you type in a PO box, it'll actually kick it back and say you can't use a PO box. So if you were to try the UPS box, if it accepts it, you're good to go. If it doesn't accept it, it'll tell you right then and there.
Actually, there's a comment here from Sharon on this topic as well. She's saying that in her experience, any address that has more than one business using it, UPS or co-working, makes Google hate you. So
yeah, I feel like Google has a way to know that the co-working spaces in particular, because they're using a singular address and it's technically like a post office box, but it's not. They can give you a little runaround. But the UPS box in particular, because it's your own dedicated box, I don't know. We'll have to see how that works. So Lorraine, if you happen to do it, I'd love if you drop me a line and let me know if it did work.
Here's a question from Mark. People always talk about how great a tool social media is. Do you think it is worth investing time in social media branding, or would that time be better used to build your website? So
it's a bit of a catch-22. You need both. If you had to choose in terms of priority, you build your website first. I always tell people, you've all heard the saying, a tree falls in the woods and no one was there to hear it, did it make a sound? Now, that's a philosophical question, but it applies to your business. If you have a business and you don't have a website, do you really exist? Are you real? Are you legitimate? Are you a scam? These are all questions people have. And for restaurants in particular, it's a bit of a challenge for restaurants. We are in very trying times. Costs are very high, so they have to cut costs where they can. But when a restaurant doesn't have a website and they're depending only on Facebook as their quote unquote website, you have a lot of issues around user experience. People don't know if you're actually open or closed. A lot of businesses didn't make it in the last 2 years. So if you had to prioritize, definitely do your website first. You do need your social media because social media is that longevity. It allows you to connect and engage with your target audience. It allows you to build a following. So there's some strategic ways to use social media. And if I'm not mistaken, we're actually teaching that class next month. So we can get into what that means for your business and how to use Instagram in particular strategically.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want more details on that webinar, again, you can find them on our website and register for that. Unfortunately, we are out of time. It's 1 minute to the top of the hour. So that's all the time we have questions for. Just a reminder, the webinar was recorded and the materials will be available in the next day or so on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org, under on-demand webinars. And our next live webinar will be tomorrow, Thursday, February 24th at 6 p.m. And the topic is sales and marketing, how to use both to grow your small business, with John Dupre presenting. And again, if you'd like to take advantage of free individual counseling, you can use the yellow bit.ly link on the screen or go to our website. And if I could kindly ask you to fill out your evaluations at the end of the webinar, they help us greatly in planning future programs. So on behalf of SCORE, thanks to everyone for attending our live webinar today. And in closing, a special thank you to Nalini for presenting great material today. And stay well, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.